Sup everyone, we're back with more Great Ace Attorney. Let's kick things off. We already saw this line. Go ahead, Mr. First. I guess he's gonna be the first one to speak in this episode. Get it? Well, the thing is, I think I remember seeing it myself as it happens. Seeing what? The blood, sir, on the assailant's hands. I think, yes. I'm almost sure it was on both of his hands, not just one. What? What? Rinosuke is dead yet again. It would appear that we're gonna need further testimony from all you witnesses. This time I would like to know precisely what you did and what you did not see. Do I make myself perfectly clear? Yes. Mr. Naruhodo, this is good news. The course of the trial seems to have slightly shifted at last. Yes. I might finally have a chance to turn things around here. We shall see. What the witnesses really saw. Oh shoot, we got the fast music. There was blood on both hands of the assailant. I sincerely and distinctly remember that. However, I suppose you might say that I didn't see the exact moment the stabbing transpired, if that matters. I remember seeing the knife, and I remember seeing both of the attackers' hands with blood on them. I didn't actually see anything myself, no. Not until I heard that scream. Anyway, the fact remains there can't have been anyone else inside that carriage, or we all would have seen. Huh. Well, lo and behold, in truth of fact, not one of you was witness to the crucial moment that the crime was perpetrated. I apologize, my lord, but honestly... there was no one else inside that carriage, and the man's hands were covered in blood. That much incriminating evidence is tantamount to saying we saw the man do it. That's really not what testimony is about. Let us examine the interior of the omnibus once more. I'm still not sure on the pronunciation of this. The victim's fresh blood is clearly visible on the seat, corroborating the witnesses' accounts. In other words, there is no substantial nor significant change in the facts of the case. Very well, your cross-examination, please, counsel. Yes, my lord. Alright. Into the cross-examination. What the witnesses really saw. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Hold it!
Time to press everything that we see right now. No, the evidence tells us all. Tells us otherwise. We have the gloves the defendant was wearing on the night in question in the court record. I'm well aware of that, sir, but nevertheless... I know what I saw and I stand by it. The man had blood on both his hands. He's defiant even in the face of hard evidence. He's steadfastly refusing to admit that he might be mistaken about what he saw. But why? Your reasoning is dire. One hand or two, the salient point remains unchanged. Minutes after the grim crime, the victim's blood dripped guiltily... Oh, the victim's blood dripped guiltily from the accused's fingers. Don't try to downplay this. Whether or not you saw the exact moment of the crime is a matter of fundamental importance, as well you know. But for crying out loud, we all know that no one else could have possibly done it. It was just trying to save us. I was just trying to save us all some time. Oh, that's a new one. Paper tapping. You have a loan of 20 guineas outstanding with the defendant, do you not? Had you hoped to release yourself from that financial burden by ensuring the defendant was found guilty? That's not entirely not what I was hoping for. I just lost a little guinea or 10 when I backed the wrong horse in the derby, that's all. I was going to win it all back. There's a fixture this weekend that's a sure thing. A little guinea or 10. I'm a banker. No one bats an eye if I borrowed a little money, spending money for the weekend. I don't believe this is what taxpayer funds are for. Think you may have revealed rather more about your character than you bargained for, sir. This witness's scruples are not on trial here. Proceed to the next witness. Is that really how it's supposed to work? Oh, brother. I remember seeing the knife, and I remember seeing both of the attackers' hands with blood on them. You definitely saw that too. Blood on both hands? Yes, sir. I mean, I know what you're gonna say. Only one of Mr. McGlove's Gildeds has any signs of blood on it. That's right. The thing is, as far as I remember, sir, when I looked down and saw Mr. McGilded sitting beside the other fellow, I don't believe he was wearing any gloves, sir. He wasn't wearing these gloves? That's correct, sir. And I saw the blood on both his hands quite clearly. It's true that the dark-colored stain on the dark leather gloves wouldn't have been easy to hide. I should point out that the police officer who apprehended the accused on the night in question reported that there was no trace of blood on Mr. McGilded's gloved hands. There wasn't blood on his hands. This is puzzling indeed. This must be significant somehow, I'm sure of it. Let's keep going through stuff, though.
I didn't actually see nothing myself, no. Not until I heard that scream.
You didn't see anything?
Oh, yes, sir. That is to say, no, sir, I didn't. Very sorry about what I said before, sir. Very sorry, yes. It was very wrong of me to make up stories and say I saw him stab the man. Wouldn't you agree, sir?
I know what you're insinuating, but I certainly wasn't making up stories. Also, your fingers are clipping through your hat, sir. Still, to say you saw nothing isn't right either, is it?
No, sir, I saw nothing at all.
Mr. Beppo, you were driving your horses. At the very least, you must have enjoyed a good view of London streets, no? I don't think he appreciated my joke. Oh, please, you didn't even see that?
It was so cold that night, you see, it was all I could do to keep from passing out. Yes, my head was fairly frozen solid, sorry to say, sir.
Dude, you don't look so good in general. It would seem prudent to avoid travel on the last omnibus service of London's cold winter nights. Beppo!
Yeah.
Oh boy. Fact remains, there can't have been anyone else inside that carriage, or we all would have seen. I assume this is what we want to... This is the one we need to press on. And everything you saw of the incident was through the skylight on the roof of the omnibus. Omnibus, I don't know. That's right, it was fiercely cold that night, but the glass wasn't frosted over.
Oh yes, I remember. I was shivering. It was so bitter.
Which rather begs the question of why the pair of you were sitting on the roof deck in the first place. Well, I don't know about this, young fellow, but I couldn't enter the cabin.
Oh, why not?
It was locked from the inside. I tried knocking, but no one opened the door. That's right. And it's a public bus service, for pity's sake. That's not what I call fair play.
Haha, fair play. I get it. Yes, I had exactly the same experience. I tried knocking, but the gen inside just gestured at me to clear off. So I had no choice but to climb up into the roof deck and look down longingly into the warm cabin below.
Well, I can assure you I wasn't just looking down, I was glaring, long and hard. And that's precisely why I can tell you with absolute confidence that if there was anyone else at all in that cabin, I would have noticed. Unequivocal, I would say.
I'm not sure about these two witnesses. Could they really have seen everything inside the cabin through the skylight? They might not have been able to. Allow me to confirm one thing, Mr. Fairplay. You were riding this omnibus and witnessed the events in the cabin through the skylight and the floor of the upper deck, is that right?
That's right, yes.
In that case, there's a portion of the cabin interior that would have been out of sight from you.
What?
By golly, really? Obviously, at this stage, we can't say for sure. But the possibility cannot be denied that at the time of the incident, there could have been another passenger in the enclosed cabin of the omnibus.
Objection!
Enough hypothetical meandering, my Nipponese friend. The prosecution demands that you substantiate your claims. After all, the scene of the crime is here, in the flesh. Very well, I will uphold the prosecution's demand.
Alright.
You will identify the area of this cross-section plan of the omnibus. Where exactly is in the omnibus are you suggesting that this potential extra passenger could have been situated?
Well, if they were sitting in the back seat, think about it. Their heads would be, like, somewhere around here, yeah? And let's just go directly, diagonally to bottom left, where they came. Okay. So they'd be able to see about this area. So, what about right below?
Take that!
Both rows of seat on the roof face in the direction of travel, whereas the seats in the enclosed cabin face each other, which means the visible part of the cabin which the passengers on the roof deck can see through the skylight. Exactly as I just said, as I've drawn here.
Oh,
That's right, my lord, as you can see. The seat opposite the one on which the victim and his attacker were sitting is obscured from view. In other words, if someone had been sitting on that seat, it's quite possible that these witnesses would have been completely unaware of it.
Objection!
it's quite possible some phantom was sitting there. You Nipponese have a forbidding habit of obscuring the truth with the ambiguity. I concur with the prosecution's rejoinder. In a British court of law, evidence is paramount. I cannot entertain this conjecture, counsel. That is, unless you're able to put a name to this mysterious passenger to whom you allude.
Can you, Mr. Naruhodo? I don't think we have anything like that. I honestly don't know. Who could it have been? Who
could have been in the other seat, which was out of sight from the witnesses on the rooftop deck? Let's... Is there anything we're missing, like the ledger, maybe? Yeah. What if I, like... I think I examined the left page. What if I do the right one? Gentlemen's names... Oh, never mind. This is the same. Okay, well, that's not it. Is there anything I missed, maybe? That part is the sheath, isn't it? I don't think I examined this. Are you alright, Mr. Naruhodo? Hmm? Oh, sorry, yes, I just don't really like blades. Oh. Those don't seem like the words of a man with a large katana slung from his waist. Yeah, I was about to say. That's not a blade, that's Kazuma's soul. Yeah, sure. Anyway, there's no sense in delaying it. Let's see what the blade looks like. Oh. Well, that's certainly blood. Dried blood at that. Oh, that looks like a lot of blood. That looks a lot like blood. It surely is blood, the victim's. Oh, an Englishman's blood looks a lot like a Japanese man's blood. Did you think it wouldn't? Yeah, what do you think? What do you think? They're aliens? What, did you think their blood would be blue or something? Sorry, it's just that we've only just arrived here in Great Britain. I'm finding it a little hard to adjust. Yes, I do understand. Okay, that wasn't anything too special. Can I see, like, inside here, maybe? No, there's nothing inside the sheath. Doesn't look like it. Guess there wasn't anything too special from that. Oh well. I can examine this. Oh. Well, let's open the door and go inside, shall we? The scene of a murder. It's horrible. Oh, we're actually going in. Damn. Okay. Well, I guess we can exit it. Let's check the blood stain. That's blood that's soaked into the seat. The victim's, obviously. Yes, and that seat would clearly be visible from the roof deck. Would you really stab somebody in full view of the other passengers like that, I wonder? Well, it was after dark. And there was a lamp on in here, so perhaps the culprit couldn't see anything outside through the skylight. Whichever way you look at it, it doesn't seem like it was a planned attack. What's this? London Notice? Ah, that's a poster for the great exhibition that's due to start 6 months from now. There's a lot of focus being drawn to the Crystal Tower, the centerpiece of the whole exposition. Isn't that where that villain Bolshevik dude's supposed to attack? Oh, the Crystal Tower! It's under construction already, I believe. People all over London must be fizzing with excitement at the prospect of such a grand event. Huh. Anything else around here? What about this? It's a poster for the great blah 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 blah. Okay, yeah, it's the same thing. Can I look up? That I can. It's quite a large skylight, isn't it? Yes, quite large enough to afford a good view into the cabin from the roof deck. There doesn't appear to be a handle or catch of any description, so I suppose it can't be opened from inside the cabin at least. Okay. There's something here. The seat has a handle, it seems. Whoa. Hello there. Is that a chest? This looks like all sort of equipment that might be needed to keep the omnibus. I should really look up the pronunciation of this. Hold up, I'm gonna do that right now. It's hard to tell from from Google, honestly. It sounds like I've been pronouncing it right the whole time. Sounds like it could honestly go either way. Anyways. Feeding tubs, tools to repair wheels, blankets, horseshoeing tools. So it's a storage compartment for the coachman to keep his things, it seems. There doesn't seem to be space for passengers to stow their luggage, that's for sure. Well, I don't imagine it'd be very convenient for that purpose anyway. Huh. Okay. Guess I can close it up again, just in case. What about this one, then? No, maybe not. Anything with the windows, maybe? Have you seen enough? Let's step back outside, then. I don't know if there's anything else, but that's interesting that... Interesting that you can get in through that. What if I look at it from the outside? I don't remember if I did this or not. You can certainly see inside the carriage through the opening, that's for sure. Yes, and there's a lamp in the enclosed cabin, so I'm sure the witnesses would have been able to see quite clearly. That's not good for us. Okay, not much there. Well then. I understand, my lord. The defense would like to put forward a name. You are a fool. That response was a desperate attempt by a man who has no notion of his own limitations. I mean, you're not wrong. A toast to hard lessons not yet learnt. Let us not delay, Counsel. The defense is still to name the passenger in the other seat. This could be it. This could be the chance I've been waiting for to turn the trial in my favor. On that night, on the night of the murder, the person occupying the seat in the omnibus cabin that was obscuring... Maybe McGilded himself? Because, if they saw the person that stabbed him, and it was someone that didn't have gloves, then that would mean that maybe it was McGilded that was across, because you couldn't see his face, yeah?
Take that!
Did I call it? The passenger in the enclosed cabin that the witness on the rooftop deck failed to see. Has to have been Mr. Magnus McGilded. Mr. McGilded? What are you talking about, Counsel? That's the name of the defendant. Indeed it is.
Objection!
Oh, what do you got to say? Holy shit. Bro just freaking yeeted a freaking chalice. If I desecrate this chamber by smashing my hallowed chalice, do forgive the discourtesy. Bro. How many chalices do you have, by the way? You've destroyed 2 already. Lord Van Zykes! People talk of those tiny island nations in the Far East as having a learning and culture of their own. But I see they use the terms ill-advisedly. Advisedly. What are you trying to say? Let me explain in terms that even a student of an artless backwater such as yourself might understand. God damn, man. Chill. When the bloody scene unfolded, the victim and his assailant were sitting side by side. Multiple witnesses have attested to the fact. It's the very premise on which this case is built.
Objection!
But that premise may be wrong. What? If the victim really was sitting beside Mr. McGilded, it creates an inconsistency that can't be reconciled in any way. What inconsistency, Counsel? The defendant's gloves, my lord. Both witnesses made the same testimony. They claimed that there was blood on both hands of the person sitting next to the victim.
Objection!
Yet we know the truth to be otherwise. Only one glove bears the gory remains.
Objection!
The point is, Even in the face of this irrefutable evidence, both witnesses have maintained their stance.
Yes, their testimony remains unchanged.
Exactly. They both adamantly swear that they clearly remember seeing blood on both hands of the assailant. In short, their memory of events is correct, and their testimony reveals the truth. It was someone else sitting beside the victim that night, a third party we have yet to identify. And the victim's blood was on that passenger's hands, both of them.
Objection!
And who was this third party?
Obviously, the true culprit.
Extraordinary! Order, order, order! Order, 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 order! What exactly are you postulating?
Objection!
The defendant's postulation is just that, nothing more than conjecture. The witnesses have clearly stated and they saw the accused.
Objection!
But when elaborating on his testimony, Mr. Fairplay said the two of them were wearing hats and I couldn't exactly make out their faces.
Yes. The tops of their heads were obscured by the roof. I could see the rest of them, though.
Yes, that's right. Both gents were most certainly hatted. Hatters do tend to notice such things, sir. I question why you're a hatter and yet your hat is so shittily made.
And what particular styles of hat did the two gentlemen sport, Mr. First?
I'm afraid I don't remember.
Did you call yourself a hatter? The style of hat makes no difference. There was no third passenger in that cabin.
How can you be so sure?
Because if there had been, the accused, Mr. McGilded, would undoubtedly have offered to depose the fact.
I mean, the defendant has claimed that he was asleep the entire time, so...
Unless, that is, you are proposing an even more preposterous explanation.
That the accused failed even to notice the presence of the true culprits in the very cabin in which he traveled. He's right. If there was another person traveling in the enclosed cabin of the omnibus, it's inconceivable that Mr. Gilded would have been unaware of it.
Order! There is clearly a simple solution to this problem. Bring the accused, Mr. Gilded, to the stand. Well, what say you, counsel? The prosecution objects, my lord. On what grounds? As a suspect, he will have already made a false statement to the police.
But what if there's some reason why he's unable to speak freely?
Magnus McGilded is no uneducated ruffian. If it indeed turns out the man has been withholding information, you can be sure it will have been a most deliberate act. Counsel for the defense, what is your opinion?
My lord, should we ask Mr. McGilded to testify or not? No, we need it. Yes, we need to hear what he has to say in order to find out the truth. The defense would like to call Mr. McGilded to the stand.
In that case, I would like to hear the opinion of the jury. Yes, sir. I need a little time to consider this.
If you ask me, I think we should hear what Mr. McGilded has to say. Get the man out here, I say! It would be utterly illogical not to hear his testimony.
When something needs doing, get it done. That's how I run things at the guild.
hearing what the patron of my favorite little park has to say. Oh yes, that would be lovely.
Yes, the jury says the man must be heard.
This dude's acting all high and mighty when he's the only one that didn't want to hear him. The only one that was undecided.
Very well. The court will hear the defendant's testimony. Bailiff, show the defendant to the stand at once.
Oh boy, here he comes. Here come that boy. Now, maybe what actually happened that night will finally become clear. Oh boy.
Let proceedings be resumed. Mr. McGilded, have you been listening to the discourse of the day?
To be sure I have, my lord. God, the Danny DeVito voice kills me, so I might have to take small breaks, and there might be skips in the recording a bit with him.
There are now two matters on which the court desires to hear from you. The first is whether or not there is a fire under this cabin, as proposed by the defense. Sorry, I'm an old man, I get tired easily. The second, as that if such a person was indeed present, why did you conceal that fact from the police?
Begad, though. 'Tis not in my nature to hide anything at all.
Just answer the questions, please.
The truth of the matter is I've been desperate about this all along. Do I tell you so, or keep me mouth shut?
Tell us what, Mr. McGilded?
The fine fellow who represented me is absolutely right. In the carriage on the night with myself and the other man, there was another passenger.
It's true?
It was me who helped the little urchin get away after it all happened. You... What?
Little urchin? What, was he like a kid or something?
No, Magnus McGilded, that convenient excuse can't save you now.
I'm truly sorry, so I am, Lord Van Zykes. I'm sure you'll be wanting to know the reason why I said nothing when I was taken in by the police. I do be having a very good reason, I assure you.
I'm trying to lighten up a bit on how, guttural that freaking voice is, because oh man does it hurt.
Which was?
Well, the little child was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and not in any way involved, you see.
What?
If the police had known the wee one was there, they'd have assumed she'd done it. Involved her into this here courtroom just like myself. I was only trying to spare that. Young hearts and young minds are easily damaged, my lord.
And who was this young child of whom you speak?
That I don't know.
You don't know?
Well, the wee thing just happened to be in the carriage that night. I never saw her before or since.
Objection!
We have absolutely no reason to believe this man. The prosecution calls for the witness's statements to be disregarded by the court.
You know, I wouldn't be surprised if the urchin is in here in this courtroom as we speak, listening to the proceedings.
What?
Smoke!
Fire! Fire! This is fire! Look, someone's trying to get away. Cough after them. It's no use. I can't see anything through the smoke.
What is going on? Be careful, Mr. Naruhodo. Cover your face.
Bailiff, don't let the accused escape. Secure the omnibus. I hereby call an emergency recess. Bailiff, ensure the defendant is in custody and clear the courtroom.
Well, we were hurriedly removed from the smoke-filled courtroom by the bailiff. This isn't in my head, so I have no idea who I'm talking to. Amid scenes of chaos as people stumbled over one another in their desperation to flee the chamber. We had no idea what was happening. All we knew was that, for the time being at least, the trial was suspended. Wowzers. Well... Bum 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 da la. Trial Part 3. You know what, let's get a little bit of content. We're only at 36 minutes, so... February 18th, 12:52 p.m., the Old Bailey, Defendant's Antechamber. What on earth just happened in there?
Mr. Naruhodo, I managed to find out what happened.
Mr. Sato,
I was told it was an advanced form of smoke grenade, a type of exploding device that releases smoke.
a smoke grenade? Sounds like the sort of things ninjas use.
They're just making sure everything is safe now. I think the trial will start again before long.
But who would have done something like that?
The police managed to catch someone who was trying to flee the courtroom, apparently.
Flee the courtroom? Why?
Well, it's a young girl of around 15, I hear.
A young girl? Then could it be the other passenger that Mr. McGilda was just talking about?
My thoughts exactly.
So he wasn't lying. Oh, what's become of Mr. McGilda, actually? There's so many things I need to ask him about, but he's not here.
I think he was summoned to the prosecutor's antechamber to answer questions, along with the young girl.
Who is she, I wonder? What was she even doing here at the trial? She was taking a huge risk, and for what possible benefit to herself?
There's another matter that's troubling me.
What's that?
The 20 pence.
Oh,
According to the coachman, Mr. Beppo, he took 4 passengers that night at a fare of 5 pence each. That comes to a total of 20 pence exactly.
But now it seems there's in fact 5 passengers.
Which means the figures don't seem to add up again.
She's right. That is strange.
Counsel for the defense. Currently proceeding to the courtroom. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, that was bad.
The trial will recommence in 5 minutes.
Oh, thank you, officer. We'll go in straight away.
Well, whoever she is, I imagine this young girl will be asked to take the stand and testify now. I really can't imagine what she's going to say, but it could alter the whole direction of the trial.
We'll know soon enough, Mrs. Sato.
Yes.
Oh, better. Oh, better, oh, better, oh, better. February 18th, 1 p.m. The Old Bailey courtroom. Back into it. Whoa. Cool design. There's the young girl next to Mr. McGilda. Look. She must have been the one who caused the disturbance before.
Well, after that rather eventful recess, the court will now resume the trial of Mr. Magnus McGilded. Now then, Lord Van Zykes. My lord. I believe you have established the cause of the smoke which veiled proceedings earlier. It seems to have been an advanced form of smoke grenade of the sort typically employed by the army. Good gracious, the army? What in the devil's name?
It was an elaborate attempt by a young girl to cloak her escape from the public gallery, but she was caught. And now occupies the stand.
Your name, girl?
We got a strong silent type.
Are you responsible for the smoke grenade which induced such pandemonium here in my courtroom? What is the meaning of this deplorable behavior?
Ahem, if I may, my lord.
Yes, Mr. McGilded?
I think perhaps I ought to explain here. Why is it this wee lass was here in the first place, and why she tried to bolt like that? It is all tied up with the events of that night, so it is.
Very well, Mr. McGilded. Give your testimony. You will explain to the court exactly how this young woman is involved in the case.
Just what did happen that night? It's not like a defense lawyer needs that information or anything. Poor Ryu. Poor Ryunosuke. The young girl. On the night in question, I took the back seat in the omnibus and promptly nodded off. Then Bagora, a loud thud and a wee scream woke me up with a fair start. There was a fella collapsed on the floor at me feet, so I sat him up on the seat across from me. Then I turned to find out where that scream had come from, and bless my soul, what did I find? This is slowly turning it away from Danny DeVito into like some Brooklyn type stuff, I don't know. But hey, it's not as detrimental to my health. There was a child in there, all curled up in a ball, hiding her wee self away. Well then.
I remain somewhat baffled, I confess. But from what I gather on the night in question, this young girl was indeed riding in the omnibus. Is this correct?
It is exactly as the defense counsel said. This last was the 5th passenger, my lord.
Very well. The defense may now cross-examine the witnesses. Are you ready, counsel?
Yes, my lord. Or rather, no. I have no idea where to start. Well, I guess our first order of business is to just press stuff. More info.
Hold it!
And when you first got onto the omnibus, were there any other passengers already on board? There were not. The cabin was empty, and there was no one on the roof deck either.
You were the first passenger, as it were. I see.
Aye, and that's why I took the backside as I did. 'Tis the most comfortable, so it is. Could you explain exactly what you mean by the back seat? By all means, 'tis how you already described it earlier. I'm talking about the seat opposite the one in which the poor gentleman who was stabbed was sitting. Like I said, 'tis the most comfortable and where I feel most at ease. And of course, I enjoy gazing through the skylight from time to time as well. Alright.
Hold it!
A loud thud, you say? And a scream. Aye, that's right. How can I explain it? It was like the sound of someone falling to the ground. That sort of noise. So you thought it was the sound of Mr. Mason falling to the floor having been stabbed? Well now, you'll remind I was asleep at the time, so I wouldn't like to say. And when the sound woke me up and I opened my eyes, there wasn't a soul to be seen in the carriage but the fellow on the floor. You didn't see anyone, but at the same moment you did hear a scream.
Oh, from the seats above you on the roof deck, I presume.
Not above me, no, my lord. 'Twas from inside the cabin. But I wasn't altogether thinking about the scream. No, I was too stunned by the desperate sight before my eyes. La da la da 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 na na da 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 la da ya da. You sat him up. The victim, you mean? That I did. On the seat across from me as I did, I could plainly see the poor devil was already gone. And you wouldn't leave a dead man just lying on the floor now, would you? 'Tis common courtesy, so it is.
I find that a little hard to believe.
Did this man actually just say Ara? Ara, Ara!
Ara, Lord Van Sykes. Now why would that be?
I don't know. I can't do an Ara Ara voice. I can't do an Oni-san.
You wake to find a man lying dead at your feet in a carriage. Any normal person would hail the cabman. Any upstanding member of London society, that is.
Well now, as you know, I'm in something of a special line of business.
The business of lending money at extortion of it at exorbitant rates of interest.
Unfortunately, my lord, not everyone is thankful for the help I offer, and some would even see me dead. So I do try, when were at all possible, to avoid getting myself in a tangle of trouble. Are you suggesting you were gonna leave the man there? Heavens alive, no, I was always intending to report it, so I was. Only I had a mind to find out the whys and wherefores first. The whys and wherefores? Right you are. There were some details I wanted to understand before anyone else got to meddling. That wee scream I heard, for example. Wouldn't your good self do just the same? Yes, the scream he says he heard at the same time as the thud of the victim collapsing. Then I turned to find out where that scream had come from, and bless my soul, what did I find? What did you find? I'm afraid I don't understand. I'm sure you told the court that there was no one else in the carriage except yourself and the victim. So I did, sir. So I did. As far as I could see, that is. What do you mean by that? Well now, 'tis a queer thing. The wee scream I heard as I woke up. It came from, if you'll excuse the vulgar expression, under my backside.
Good gracious!
Under your backside? And when I lifted the seat on which I'd been sitting, I found there was a wee cubbyhole there for storage.
Mr. Naruhodo.
Naruhodo?
We can examine the omnibus ourselves, remember?
Yes, of course. The whole bus was submitted as evidence.
This would be a very good time to have a thorough look around inside.
I've already done that. And that's when I found her. Okay. There was a child in there all curled up in a ball, hiding her wee self away. You say she was hiding herself? That's right. It was hard to see in the dim lamplight, but she was all curled up in a wee ball. When her eyes met, well, my heart nearly stopped beating in my chest. You're really overacting this. Still in all, I pulled her out from under there. And sat her on the seat opposite so I could have a wee chin wag at her. With her. Seat opposite. That's right, just next to the dead gentleman there.
You sat this young girl next to a corpse, sir.
Well, as I'm sure I mentioned, a gentleman in my position can all too often find himself in mortal danger. So, I needed to find out just who this urchin was, you see. And while I was in the middle of talking with her, I heard another scream, a fellow's voice, A fella's voice this time. Presumably that scream was Mr. First, who was sitting on the roof deck seats. Right you are again, I would say, sir. Looking down through the skylight, he must have seen this young girl and the gentleman with the knife in his belly.
In other words, the previous witnesses did not, in fact, see you at all, Mr. McGilden. What they believed to be yourself and the victim was, in fact, this girl and the late Mr. Mason.
Aye, my lord. I was, as I think everyone understands now, sat at the back of the carriage out of sight. Wow.
It is certainly plausible.
Okay, but can we get Mr. First in here to see if he's telling the truth? Because wouldn't he recognize her clothing? Because he said he only couldn't see their faces, basically. So, I mean, did it look like the outfit of a girl? I mean, I know she could have changed her outfit since then, but let's be honest. Since when do Ace Attorney characters change outfits? Unless you're like Hosanaga.
The defendant is somewhat diminutive in stature, and readily confused perhaps with this young girl.
After that, of course. With the scream from the gentleman over us, the drivers realized something was wrong and pulled up the horses.
Thank you, I've heard enough. The events as explained are clear in my mind. However, at least one conundrum remains. Who is this girl?
We will find that out next time on The Great Ace Attorney. Adios, ciao, and signing off. Until next time. Ja, mata ne.